Hello, warriors. I am back and you are back, and that makes me so very happy. I am so grateful for you and for you taking your time to listen in to me and with me on this journey of ours to become that next greater self. I've labeled this podcast Love Your Life because that's what it's all about. The more aware we become in our everyday choices and of our emotional intelligence, the more we're going to live our life and take choices that align ourselves with our inner being and loving life. So let's dig in. I am Susie Barolo. I am a life and wellness coach. I coach women and some men and help them to get to that place where they are loving their life more. Not every day is rainbows and daisies, but we have a level of contentment that just shines out for the world. So what's interesting to me, and this is what my blog post this week is around this time of year, I find myself blogging on boundaries and relationships and different behaviors that we have in relationships that do not help us, like people pleasing. I wrote a blog earlier in April on people pleasing, and then paying too much attention to what other people think of us and their opinions about us. And the last post I wrote on was having difficult conversations. And it must be that time of year when we're either sick of being treated the way we've allowed ourselves to be treated, or we're in spring cleaning and we're just looking around us and we're like, hey, which of these relationships fill me up, fill up my cup I talk about, or deplete me? And either way, I support it. I do. The people around us support every aspect of our health. The relationships are one of my 5 pillars of wellness: sleep, exercise, fuel, soul care, and relationships. And it is a crucial piece of how we feel. It affects our health, it affects our wealth, it affects our mindset, and everything in between. I've written a lot about boundaries and boundaries in relationships. And that is because I spent the first 30 plus years of my life without boundaries in my important relationships. I had none. And so I didn't understand. I think I thought boundaries were more punitive and something you did if you didn't like the person, or a way of controlling them. But I have since adopted boundaries into my life, and my relationships have never been better, including even relationships with people I don't speak with anymore. So listen in, because this is a good one. When I dig into why I didn't set boundaries in the past, and what I hear a lot about from clients when they don't want to set boundaries, 2 main reasons. One, for me, my lack of emotional intelligence. I didn't understand that I was not able to make someone feel a certain way by what I did, said, or how I acted. I thought that I could make them feel a certain way by what I did, said, or acted. And so I would not set boundaries. Or I had an underlying belief that my needs didn't matter in the relationship. For me, it was even greater, just sort of in life. But that the things I wanted or desired had to take a back burner to the needs and desires of others around me and those that I was in a relationship with. As I said just a couple seconds ago, since shifting these views and learning more about emotional intelligence, I've been able to move away from the harmful behaviors that we've talked about earlier this month, people pleasing and being so concerned about what other people think about me and my inner critic. And I've leaned into self-confidence, loving myself, and living the life I'm here on earth to live. I've set boundaries with the most fundamental relationships in my life: my parents, my siblings, my ex, my children, my fiance, my friends, my clients. Boundaries are a crucial piece of a healthy relationship, and they are a piece that are involved in every single relationship in my life. So how do we do it? How do you do it, you ask? How can I help you set boundaries in some existing relationships to enable them to thrive? Several different ways, but first we need to understand what boundaries are. Boundaries are a request with a follow-up. So there are 2 pieces to boundaries. They are not done to punish the other person. They are not done to restrict the other person. They are done for you, okay? They come from love, not fear or anger. They are not done to control the other person. They are done to protect you and your relationship with that person. A boundary would sound something like, please stop yelling at me. If you continue to yell, I will hang up the phone. The request is, please stop yelling at me. That's the first piece of the boundary. The follow-up, or consequence some call it, is I will hang up the phone. There's no drama. It's not a punishment. You are not responsible for that other person. That person can continue to yell at you. That is their, there you go. They can keep yelling. What are you going to do? And what is your response ability in this? You have the ability to respond. And so you said, if you keep yelling at me, I will hang up the phone. Think of boundaries like the fence of your house. It's not an aggressive act to build a fence, but it does take conscious thought as to where you want the fence and why. In the past, I've set boundaries from a place of anger or with the intent to control the other person. These type of boundaries don't foster connection, but codependency. Codependency is something I can help you with as a coach. It's rampant all over, and it was rampant in my life. And the book I recommend this week in the newsletter addresses it. But you must, the point is you must do the emotional work to own your piece of whatever is going on so that you can set your boundary with the other person from a calm place of love for yourself and that relationship. Okay? The second thing, we need to know what kind of boundaries do we need. So the first is to understand what boundaries are, request, and a follow-through. Now we need to know what kind of boundaries do we need. How do we do this? By asking ourselves questions about the relationships and our expectations. What is important to you in a romantic relationship? What is important to you in a work relationship? What is important to you in a friendship? Some areas to look into that might be able to dig deeper is if you ask yourself, what do my spouse and I often fight about? What am I sensitive about? What patterns from my past are important to me to discontinue or continue? We often think these things through in business interactions, but not in relationship. It serves us all to shift that. Think of boundaries like a framework for your relationship. When you send a text to your spouse, what would you like to happen? When you call a friend and she doesn't answer, what would you like to happen? These are sort of, if this, then that. We do that in business all the time. Let's take it to our relationships. We do it in business because it works. Keep in mind, just because we set a boundary doesn't mean it will be upheld. In fact, if we're setting boundaries in long-standing relationships, you can definitely expect some what I call boundary violations. That this is not a sign that your relationship is over or that they don't honor or respect you. Rather, it's a sign that you've taught them how to treat you and they're used to that. And they're sort of like, whoa, wait a minute, something's changed here. People learn how to treat you based on what you tolerate. Depending on the length of your relationship and your relationship patterns, you may be working with some long-standing habits, and change will take consistent follow-through of your boundaries. So you make the request and you have to consistently follow through. So if you've been living for years and years with your dad yelling at you on the phone, and consistently every single time you say, as I said, Dad, if you continue yelling at me on the phone, I will hang up, and you hang up. Okay? Maybe, we won't go there. If you've allowed people to yell at you your whole life, when you hang up the phone, when you say you'll hang up the phone, if it continues, the other person will probably think, oh yeah, right, and go on yelling. Your responsibility is to clearly state the boundary. Please stop yelling at me, and then do the follow-through, hanging up the phone. It's not to punish them. It's to respect you and your relationship with them. If you don't hang up the phone, you build up resentment and anger, and that shines out on that relationship. Give yourself both the credit. Hang up the phone. You're not responsible for their reaction. You're responsible for doing what you said that you would do. Follow through. If you want things to change, you must change things. The third piece, we need to know how to set boundaries. Some boundaries don't need to be said aloud unless they're violated. This is an important piece. For example, I have the boundary that I will not be hit. I don't say that boundary to everyone I come into contact with, like the supermarket teller or whatever. In fact, I don't know if I've even ever told my partner, but that doesn't mean it's okay to hit me. If he were to hit me, then I'd need to tell him my boundary by saying something like, I do not allow people to hit me. If you hit me again, I will leave this relationship. Another example, I don't allow people uninvited into my house. If I were to come home and there was someone in my house, I would leave and call the police. I did not need to leave a sign in my yard that says strangers not allowed, or to tell this person in advance that I would call the police if he or she entered my house. So, boundaries might not even need to be said out loud, but they do take some conscious thinking of you. Usually boundaries need to be said out loud if there has been a boundary violation in the past. For example, something that comes up often. Parents with caretakers, or say you're passionate about monitoring what your kids watch on TV and not having the TV on in the background. Yet your mother always has Fox News or CNN on when they are at her house. You get to set a boundary. Find some quiet time and answer these 6 questions ahead of time before setting your boundary and before, if this is you, sending your kids to your mom's house. 1, what is the boundary violation? 2, what is the boundary I want to set? 3, what is my request? I start my request if you. 4, finish with the follow through. Then I will. So actually think that out beforehand. 5, what do you think the other person's reaction will be when they hear of your boundary request? And 6, what will the benefits of establishing this boundary be? Why is that important to you? Okay. Please, when you're learning how to set boundaries, do not skip a step, since each piece serves a purpose. It's important to bring consciousness to why you are asking for what you're about to ask and the result you expect. Often when working through those 6 questions, you get some clarity and you actually change your boundary, or you reword it, or you come from a calmer place. So take the example of your mother. Awareness is the first step to change. So 1, what is the violation? Mom having the TV on. 2, what is the boundary I want to set? I want my mom to not have the TV on when my kids are with her. Okay, be clear. 3, start your boundary with a request. If you have the TV on when my kids are with you. 4, finish the request with the follow through. Then I will not leave them with you. You can add something in there like, I don't want to do this because I respect your relationship. I like the kids over there. I'm not judging you for having the TV on. It's something that is important to me to have my kids not around the TV and paying attention to what they feed their brain. So if you'd like to continue watching the kids, I do not want the TV on. All right, number 5, what do you think the other person's reaction will be when they hear of your boundary? So your mother. Maybe your answer is, she will not be happy. She will think I'm overreacting. This piece is important so that you set your expectations. If you skip this step, you may think she'll just be like, oh yeah, sure, Susie, no TV, great. This is rarely the case, especially with long-standing relationships. Set your expectations that there will be some pushback, and you will be in a calm place to have the adult conversation about that pushback and be able to accept it and listen. 6, what will the benefits of this boundary be? Why is that important to you? The benefits of this boundary will be, say, that my kids will come home and they will not be scared, or they will not be using violent language from something they saw on TV. This is important to me because I don't believe it's necessary to expose my kids to the negative news stream out there. Okay, I chose this example, and I'm not saying I agree or disagree with your mom having the TV on when the kids are over, and this is not a concern. This is not something that comes up for me, but I chose it because I hear many variations of this in my coaching practice. For example, like getting all annoyed because your spouse feeds the kids sugary food, or a friend gives your kids over extravagant gifts, or your friend doesn't return phone calls, or your spouse doesn't reply to your texts in what you consider a timely manner, or a coworker comes into your office every morning to complain about his home life. If they don't know what you want, then they can't do anything about it. People cannot read your mind. Once you let them know of your boundary, you give them the opportunity to meet you where you are or to move on. Like all relationship communication, it's important to drop the drama of what the other person is doing. Stop making stories up like, oh, they're coming in and I helped them in this way. Blah, blah. Just drop it, okay? Often we get so worked up about what someone else is doing. What I'd like you to see today is that if we haven't verbalized what we want or what we expect, the other person doesn't know, and we can't complain about it. We give away our right to complain about it. People cannot read our minds. Again, this is where I get back to, it is so important to engage in CCC, clear, concise communication. Act like an adult in your relationships, and you will have adult relationships. Even with kids, to just say, it is my expectation that before you leave for school after a weekend, your bed is made, just set it out. Have the communication. They cannot read your mind. Speak from a place of compassion, not judgment, and your relationships will thrive. Drop the drama. Your mom is not watching TV to harm the kids. In fact, she might not even realize it's on. She might be so used to that background noise. Have the conversation. They're not doing it because they're an evil person. They act the way they act because that's who they are. So if you would like to change something, then you need to bring it up. And again, with the example of your mom, if she chooses to keep the TV on and watch, well, then you get to choose to not bring your kids over there. No drama. Like, okay, mom, keep watching TV. That's fine. Same thing with someone yelling at you on the phone. Okay, keep yelling at me. I've hung up. You know, you take care of you, they take care of them. Today, I ask you to look at your relationships and think of an area where a boundary needs to be set. How will you know that a boundary needs to be set? It's actually pretty easy. Ask yourself what bugs you about the person, or you, like, usually when a boundary needs to be set, you're really tense and you're annoyed and you just are like quick to trigger. You know, one thing, they like leave a plate on the sink and you blow up. So ask yourself where you are reactive. That is where you need to get on that, because it's bugging you because you haven't communicated your needs. Start with one small piece of your relationship today and let me know how it goes. Give those around you the opportunity to connect deeper. This can be a scary thing to say your boundary, but in my experience, it has made my relationship so much deeper and with so much less drama. So let's go, warriors. Do your part and let's shine out to that world. See you next week.